like this that I really look back on. I recently won a award from Youth Ottawa for it was the Take a Stand Award. And one of my teachers from the 4th grade, I guess she remembered me and she actually commented on it saying, "Oh, wow, congratulations, Kirsten. I'm so happy for you." And the more I think of it, the more she probably seen that and could never have even imagined me winning something such as that or winning the June Gervin Award. And it's things like that. I've met so many people who look down upon Indigenous youth, Indigenous folks. When I was in the 10th grade, I went to a very inclusive school, Rideau High School, as a few of you Ottawa people may know or have heard of. When I was going to this school, a lot of people had told me that, especially my own peers, that the school wasn't good, that it was filled with drug addicts and just very bad people. And I'm not the type of person to listen to what people say before I experience it myself. So that being said, no matter the kind of negativity that my peers or my family or people in my community had said about this school, I still took a chance on it, just like I do every single human being. And it was probably one of the best schools I have ever attended, and I have attended quite a few. This school really allowed me to bring my Indigenous identity into the light. And although there were a few bad apples within the school itself, it was immensely healing for me. I had teachers that looked up to me. I had students that looked up to me. I had teachers that went out of their way to make sure that I had excelled in the westernized education system. And I went to a school where the Indigenous identity was appreciated, was loved. We had a lodge that was built by my grandfather and his advising team. My grandfather named our lodge. We had a place specifically in the school that we were allowed to smudge. And it was the first school I've ever gone to that was very accepting of everyone's differences. We had a Muslim church and downstairs in the basement. We had our lodge upstairs, and there was just so many things that were able to bring these youth towards their own identities and to fully understand them a bit more. And when I was in the 10th grade, in 2017, they decided to shut that school down. And for me and a lot of other students, that was something that really pulled on our heartstrings, and it was almost like a slap in the face. It was the only school in Ottawa that was as accepting as it is. I've never been to a school such as it in my entire life. Myself and many other youth tried fighting to keep it open. We vocalized our concerns of closing the school down to the board. We vocalized how this is going to affect our mental health and our ability to go to school. We were kids that were falling between the cracks. We were kids that didn't enjoy going to school because we felt, as I'm going to say, we felt dumber than a lot of the other students within the school. And having the lodge there, having people that appreciated us and supported us made it easier for us to go to school every day. It made it easier for us to look towards something. And still, no matter what we were going to say, the board already had its mind, chosen. It already knew what it was going to do with this school. And it knew that it was going to be shut down, despite what all of the community advocates were saying at these meetings. I do applaud the school board for allowing us to vocalize, our concerns and at least to hear us out. But at the same time, it was very harmful to the Indigenous community as a whole. We were kids that weren't appreciated at other schools. So this definitely had a toll on us. Myself and many other youth, whenever we transitioned into the next high school that was around us, they actually allowed us to build a lodge. They allowed us to make those changes because we made it clear at many board meetings that if that wasn't an option, that we would have more kids stop attending. We would have more kids that just didn't feel welcomed at this school. We went from a school with maybe 700 students every day to 1,600. So I'm sure you can imagine how much, that pained a lot of the kids. We needed one-on-one time with teachers. We needed teachers to care for us. And going from a school with 700 kids to 1,600, it's insane, absolutely insane, because these teachers that were supposed to be caring for us now have to care for, a very greater number than what we originally had. So we didn't get much one-on-one time, but the short time of me being at the second school that I attended, I definitely still feel a part of it. My blood, sweat, and tears will always be in those lodge walls, no matter what the situation is right now. I do always and every day thank the creator for allowing the board to, mend their relationship by creating a new lodge with us and inviting the youth to be a part of that. Because when I attended Rideau High School, I wasn't a part of building that lodge, but I still felt connected to it. So being able to put my own thoughts and ideas into the lodge at Gloucester High School really had me looking at it in a different light. I now go to, I now attend, I guess, part-time because I work full-time. I attend a school that was specifically created to bring the Indigenous identity to light. I go to a school called Urban Aboriginal, which focuses on Inuit, Métis, and First Nation students. Every day we learn different art forms about our people. We learn different teachings. We learn how to sing. We learn how to drum. And we learn things that we would be learning on the land within our own school. And because of this, so many students have been able to excel in this type of situation and environment. It's been said time and time again that Indigenous peoples need to be more connected to the land. They need to be more connected to their teachings, to their cultural ways. And with Odawa, which is an organization within Ottawa, had actually started this school because they could see that if these students aren't excelling within a westernized colonial education system, then maybe they will excel and succeed within our education system. And every day I'm so thankful for being a part of this school, because of the fact that I had experienced so many hardships. And when I say hardships, I talk about, the sexism within schools, the teachers that don't understand who you are or where you come from, the teachers who don't open their eyes to see who you truly are or listen to you speak. Speaking with Sylvia and June and even Richard, I see that they are all willing to fully understand fully understand who I am as a person. Sylvia was so nice and invited me out to lunch, and she took the time out to learn about who I am as a person, learn about what I advocate for, what I, do within my day-to-day life. And it's people like that that really will change the view of Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. And it's people like you all that are going to bridge that gap. Whenever I was going to a Catholic school, and it was actually and I was telling Sylvia this the other day, I went to a uniform school, so we all looked the same, we were all dressed the same, and my teacher never said this to anyone else except for me. And I was probably I'm a very light-skinned native, as I'm sure you can all see, but I was darker than all of my other peers and classmates, and I made it known what my identity was. I've always been proud of my background. I've always been proud to be Algonquin. And my teacher actually, I had a peer call me a slur one day, and I really didn't appreciate it. So I brought it to my teacher. And my teacher told me that it's because of the way that I hold myself. It's because I'm too flirty or too this or too that, which I was a very shy student back then. So I can never imagine myself being too flirty as he claimed. Um, but why does an adult get to look at a student and say, you are too flirty or you hold yourself too high? When you tell a student that, they're going to make themselves lower because they don't want to be perceived as that slur that they've been called. They're going to think, okay, something's wrong with what I'm doing, something's wrong with the way that I'm acting, but there never was. And, June made a really good point when I met with her and Sylvia that why couldn't I talk to my teacher the way I talk to my parents? Question everything that he said. And I look back to that and I really do wonder why I never questioned it. But at the same time, it's because a lot of youth and a lot of children feel that they cannot question things that authorities say. And I think about that every day. And I remind my sister and my siblings, my sister's 10 years old. My brother is very, very new. My mother just had him. He's about 5 months old at this point. But it's insane that, we get so scared of our teachers, of our principals, of people like that, and we don't question these things. What, you know, what right did that teacher have to tell me that I was too flirty? Why could a teacher that was twice my age see that I was flirty? And that's something that really ticks me off to this day.
Hi, I'm Marley. I am Akila Richards' daughter. I am currently working with her network, Raising Free People. I'm a youth rights advocate who is helping the National Youth Rights Association, NYRA, on their self-directed education outreach currently. Um, I am also really just studying a lot of languages right now. And learning languages has been a really interesting way of figuring out how young people are taught to see themselves and the process of learning. So, I mean, I'm a language tutor and a youth rights advocate, if you want to put it on a occupation. So I'm really looking forward to having a little bit of a conversation surrounding my mom's video here. So, in terms of a child-friendly home, I think I really try to focus when I'm talking to adults about how to be advocates for young people. I really do focus on the aspect of equity over equality, right? Because as she perfectly gave that example, like technically, why do we have a say in where we want to stay? Like they're paying all the bills and do 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 do. But in terms of equity, that simply doesn't um, it doesn't foster the sort of trust environment we want to have. I was doing a previous workshop about something like this, and one of the things that came up was just thinking about the kind of process that you want to have when interacting with young people. Like, what do you want your practice to be? So I use the instance sometimes of my mom and I used to have a thing because I like an issue because I didn't make up my bed, but she wanted me to. And so we would go back and forth. I'm like, it's my bed. You're not even in it. I'm not in it half the time. There was all that back and forth. But the thing that really gave her pause, right, was thinking about what is the process that I want to have for this? If she is doing something that I don't like, do I want my process to be just do it anyway because I said so? Or figuring out why I have an issue with it? Is there a compromise we can come to? Does there need to be a compromise, right? So, as you said previously, mad question asking, just being able to do that Socratic method and just constantly be like, well, why this? Why that? Is that even their problem? That sort of pausing process is something that I really try to instill. No, it's something I really try to get people to think
Encourage.
about.
Yeah, encourage, empower. Totally.
Yes,
Totally.
encourage.
I
Yes,
want to
because
touch.
I feel that it's a very transformative way. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I was saying, I think all of these processes to like deter your ability to trust yourself and these sorts of things, they all lend themselves very well to other kinds of prejudice. I think one of the easiest ways to explain the damage that school does, and my mom calls it school wounds, right? What the easiest way to explain those school wounds to people who are apprehensive, is to think about it through the context of any other thing. Like, I'm a Black girl, right? So if you think about, like as like the dynamic of power, right? You think about how you want to wield that, like, oh, they're rebelling because they're rebellious. Like, no, they're rebelling because they have unmet needs, essentially. And you're deterring the ability to trust themselves because it's essential to keeping your power. If they have a reason to believe in themselves, or to at least feel like they know what they're talking about, know their feelings enough to go with it, then you lose a lot of that power. So I think tying the way we think of education and what we're putting young people into to other prejudices that we are more in tune with, that we want to get rid of. I think that's a really easy way to think of it too. Like, oh, sometimes it's simplifying it, but like, let's think of this between like a child and adult as a Black person and a white person. Like, how does that play out? Does that feel weird? And a lot of times the answer is yes.
Thank you so.
So I think reframing is super helpful. Yeah, us having a large community that then has resources we can use, even if we can't get to them ourselves, that is part of our privilege of being, of having, a lot of people that we're able to trade with all the time. So it's not like I would never ascribe one way of doing this sort of thing, but I think what makes self-directed education the way to go in terms of youth rights is the ability to see them as a person, right? To see young people as a person. So if you are having an issue, or you have something that you really need to do and you can't like explain right now with a person, what do you do, right? Do you just kind of like push them and be like, because I said so? Like, all of those conversations in your head, right? All of those thoughts are things that need to be had, because they're not things that immediately jump to mind when we think about interacting with young people. So yeah, I mean, it'll take me a minute to recognize like how deep my privilege goes in terms of being able to do this sort of self-directed thing, but it is 100% something that people in every situation can practice, just to different degrees.
So yeah, I'm Oliver Przednowek. I'm not like a youth rights advocate. I don't know all that much about education, but what I do have is a lot of experience both as a homeschooler and going to school. So I hope to kind of bring that perspective, as someone who just last year was in school, and kind of talk about that. Another thing I found with the video is when Akila was talking about how power works, and how like kind of in parenting and as well as in schools, power tends to be conventionally ruled over youth instead of being shared. So that's definitely something that I've sort of seen go both ways. I've seen power being ruled over youth. I've also seen it seen situations in which it's shared. So for example, I mean in my home, I've been pretty fortunate where power is shared, um, in the whole kind of equity way that Akil was talking about. When I was in homeschooling courses, when I was doing classes with other homeschoolers, power was really, it was, the teacher was there to provide knowledge and to facilitate our learning, but it was very much the students that sort of chose where they wanted the class to go. Um, Whereas then when I went to school, I did school both in grade 7 and grade 12. Grade 12, I went to more conventional school. It was like a Ottawa public school. So when I was there, it really, like the classes were very much a curriculum that's set up by some person or some board of people, and that's taught, and students have to like they have to like go with that, right? They have to take the test and all that, and that sort of creates, because the power is ruled down on students, that's very much it creates a sort of sense of rebellion in a way, um, because no one likes to be no one likes to do something that they're forced to do. It's not something that we enjoy doing generally. Um, so stuff like people cheating on tests, that all of that doesn't, it all becomes, we're learning for a test to get a good mark so we can get into university. Um, because apparently that's what dictates how well our lives will go. Um, so yeah, that was really my experience in school. There are exceptions. There are some teachers who kind of understand how it doesn't always make sense, but generally that was my experience. Whereas yeah, in the homeschooling classes, I was able to, or it was very much more kind of student driven. Um, so that was just interesting seeing that, like seeing how Akila was talking about that, and also like with parent, like the teacher has power. They're the ones who decide what mark a student will get, and the students don't like it when they're being told to learn what some other person wants them to learn. Um, Whereas then, if that power isn't sort of uh, isn't top down, it's much more we're much more interested in learning. And like when you're in school, you aren't trusted, and that's kind of, that doesn't lend itself well to you trusting yourself. Whereas again, when I'm homeschooling, when I choose to self-direct my education, um, it's I have to trust myself that I know what I'm doing. I I know that I want to learn this, and I've kind of decided like this is what I want to learn, and this makes sense for me to learn. And then trusting myself to like really go with that and pursue that.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I'm Ella. So I've worked with Unlock on a lot of their programs as a participant. And the first thing I want to say is that programs like COPS and co-production projects, they do work. They create real change. They empower young people. And I guess what I'd like to do is use myself in a non-vain way to show that these do work and things do happen. But the first thing I would like to say is that these opportunities should be available to all young people. So the story I normally start off with, and I know the guys at Unlock don't like me putting it down to luck, but the reason I'm involved in so many youth voice projects is over a game of rock, paper, scissors. So I was part of my school council in year 8 or year 7. I don't know, one of the two. And the opportunity came up for some young people to go to COPS. And there was one space left, and I didn't, to be honest, I wasn't fussed. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go. So me and this other girl, we did rock, paper, scissors to see who would get the place. In my head, really, I was thinking, yes, day out of school, this is going to be great. And I won. Didn't really know what I was letting myself in for, but I got there and I was like, do you know, this is quite cool. You know, this is better than just a day out of school. And I went back and I got involved in, I think my first action group was a disability inclusion action group. So I got to work with people from Portsmouth, some older than me, some younger than me, and young people from SEM schools as well, to talk about how we can ensure that, you know, students in mainstream schools and special needs schools aren't treated differently, and we all get to work together. And I'd say nothing tangible came out of that, but I believe that was because at that point none of us knew the power our voices could have. So I went back the next year. I was like, yeah, it was good last year, let's go again. And I thought, you know what, I'll stand for the executive group as well. So I was then voted in vice chair of COPS. I got involved in an LGBTQ plus, there we go, action group. And we're talking about the ways that education around those topics should be improved in schools. I went back, I was involved in governor meetings at school, and that's when I realised that adults are almost scared of the opinions of young people. So I went to a governor's meeting for my school, and with another young person, and we were saying that we want new teachers to be trained in how they can help young people, whether it's topics of sexual health, sexual identity, that sort of thing. And it appears the information that we'd brought with us and we were going to propose to our head teacher had already been shared prior to the meeting. So we were sat there, we were fighting our corner, and our head teacher had a, no disrespect to her, she had an answer for everything. And we thought, right, this isn't how it should be. You know, we want to show the views of the people around us, and we kept fighting. And we went to COPs and we brought back the same ideas each year, different ideas for different topics as well. And that's, I think, when it really hit me that young people, we have this power, but I think the mindsets of the people with the ability to make this change need to change. So essentially what COPS has done has made me very determined to empower the young people around me. And this is where I believe that all young people should have these opportunities, because it is, as rightly said, 10% of young people get 90% of the opportunities. I am crazy busy all the time because I'm so determined to ensure that young people's voices are heard. And it's sort of been a domino effect for me. So I joined COPS, was vice chair for 2 years. I stayed at the forum for 4. I was head girl at secondary school. I got involved in the Future in Mind project. I've been to the House of Commons 3 times, one of which was with COPS as we celebrated, I think it was their 15th birthday. All of these great events I managed to go to, and I'm now a One Youth ambassador as well. And this is definitely something I wouldn't have gotten involved in had I not done COPS. So I get to meet with young people from across the country, and we work with the One campaign to tackle extreme poverty and preventable disease. So we lobby our MPs, we go to Parliament. We went to Portcullis House last year before COVID. We were lobbying our MPs to support funding for Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. And the best thing for us is when our lobbying, you know, it results in something. So the UK government did support funding for Gavi this year, or last year. Academic years, they threw me off. So it was this year. And it was great for us to see, look, it may not have been us on our own, but we were able to lobby our MPs with other young people. We wrote to ministers, we spoke to people in our communities, and we've just ensured that people across the world are going to have access to the vaccines they need. And it all boils down to the catchphrase that we have as ambassadors, that where you live shouldn't determine whether you live. And that for me is, I think, wow, I've just gone from thinking about, you know, I joined the school council and we were moaning about the toilets not being very nice. And I'm now lobbying with other young people to ensure that children have the right to an education and a meaningful life. And you just have to step back and think, wow, without organisations like Unlock, these young people wouldn't be this empowered. And that's why I will repeat it again, all young people should have access to these opportunities, because we are responsible for encouraging others to get involved. And if anything, we have the power to do the empowering. And if I hadn't won that game of rock, paper, scissors, I don't know what Ella would be doing now, to be honest. But it's great to think that these opportunities are there for young people, but we just need to see more, and we need to see them more accessible. And I think one thing we need to take away from the pandemic is that we can't use not being able to meet in person as an excuse to not get young people together anymore. There is so much scope for using Zoom and other platforms to have young people come together, not just for talking shops, but to create change and shape a world that we really want to see. So find the young people within your organisations around you and empower them to empower other people. That's all I'll say. Thank you. Can I just weigh on that one a little bit? So when it comes to opening up classrooms for discussions, I can say that when I was sitting my GCSEs, our English teacher was probably the best at bringing our opinions out of all of us. All I can say is you just had to mention Trump or her husband, and that's it. Everyone was off task. Debates were raging through the classroom. And you might have looked at it, you could look at it from 2 perspectives, I think. Looking at a class of students being massively disruptive and not focusing on their learning, or a group of students who were actually learning how to carry a debate in a non-structured way. We would fly from the morals of religion to should we even have to go to school, how should employment work, all of these amazing big concepts that we probably shouldn't have been discussing in that lesson, but we're incredibly powerful. And I think once you give young people these opportunities, they lose the novelty of having, I mean, freedom of speech shouldn't be a novelty, but it's like telling a child, look, you can eat all the food you want, and they're going to go crazy for the first few days, but after a while they're going to go, actually, it's not a big deal. I'll just eat it when I want. And when you give young people that platform to speak, the novelty will wear off eventually, and they'll just use that space meaningfully. And I think that's where, in a learning environment, I get that it's difficult, but you have to push past that boundary to begin with, and you have to give young people these opportunities. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. But yes, I would say if anyone works in education, don't be scared of letting your classroom run a little bit wild sometimes, because eventually you'll just end up with some really empowered young people.
Thank you so much, Derry. Hello, everybody. My name is Aaliyah. I am 17 years old. I'm the founder of People Power, and I'm really glad to have Simi, who's another key member of People Power in the movement. So People Power is a youth-led movement. We're based in the UK, and we engage with as many young people as possible to try and engage and educate young people on the mission of educational transformation. In a nutshell, we're just trying to challenge young people to reimagine what the 21st century education system looks like. We are currently experiencing school Monday to Friday, and we want to put ourselves in a position where we can be critical thinkers and reflect on what's working, what's not working, and how things can be better for the future. So, having been in the UK education system for over a decade now, the idea of democratic schooling is one that is quite unfamiliar to me, and it's quite disappointing to say. Although it is very polarised from our current existing state of schools, we want to encourage ourselves as young people to think about what it means to introduce democratic schooling into our current education system. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I think it's really important for even when we leave this call to start thinking about how we champion democratic schooling and how we champion youth voice, because as young people, a part of the movement of People Power, it's kind of in the name. We try to champion young voices, promote fairness, and really centre young people and their ideas, because from my experience of school so far, that has simply not been happening. So before, I don't want to say too much, so Simi has something to say, but some of the greatest moments that I'm really proud of what People have been doing was our challenge against, our legal challenge against the Prime Minister during the coronavirus pandemic, where he essentially stopped under 18s from submitting a parliamentary question and submitting a question for the coronavirus daily briefings. And so when young people went onto the website, it literally said you couldn't submit a question because you were under 18. And so young people, a part of People Power, were extremely annoyed, frustrated, and just didn't actually understand or couldn't comprehend why our voices were being silenced and why our voices were being shut down. So we came together and we got legal support to take action against that. And although they didn't do the very best in terms of their response to that, there were a few initiatives that were taking place afterwards. We also did some work with the Children's Research Centre, a part of the Open University, which was a whole event championing youth voice and promoting what it means to be democratic in school and how it really means to essentially dismantle the tokenistic style of education that we have at the moment, whereby we have school councils and, you know, leadership in school, and you're only kind of told to create like a little event and not actually have the sort of resources and support to create real tangible changes. So it's really exciting to be here. I've really enjoyed listening to the speakers, and I want to pass on to Simi to talk about more about what it means to be about involved in People Power. Thank you, everybody. And I think as a young person who's a part of People Power in itself, we still realise and witness when other young people are not engaging or somehow just feel like they don't want to take part in it. And it's almost frustrating because it's like, it's your education as well. It's not just mine that we're fighting for, it's yours as well. It's your siblings, it's your future. And so for us, it is frustrating. But I think really the thing, it's a hard code to crack, to be honest. But I think some of the factors are, one, some of the young people feel like it's not going to affect them, and that idea of, with People Power, we center our stories around the work that we do. So it's our realities, our stories, what drive everything. And I think that's what's picked up the most engagement with young people, because they then hear different stories from different young people, from different backgrounds, from different locations in the UK. And they're like, wait, I can connect to that. And they're like, hey, wait, that's the effect that it's had on that person. That's also happened to me too. And look at how this person's trying to do something about it and not just be passive about it. Maybe I need to do something too, and, you know, pull my socks up a little bit. So I think that's one of the things about sharing our stories, because we've got so many different types of young people from different places, different backgrounds. We share our stories from different experiences, from whether it's exclusions, whether it's to even racism in school, whether it's to just a curriculum, feeling like, you know, you don't get to have your voice heard, whatever it is, we share our stories. And second of all, I think there's a difference between, I'm trying to figure out what the word is, but I think there's activism and then what we're doing, where it's like, it's so urgent, the work that we're doing. I think a lot of people see it as like, oh, we're just talking about what's wrong in the world. Whereas this is like, we're talking about what's wrong, but we also need to take action. And so the work that we're doing, young people see the clear actions that they can do that are easy, and that, you know, it's not just liking a picture or just attending an event one time, because people think, if I attend that event, what's going to happen afterwards? So we trying to encourage for our own events and other people to always be action focused, and to always have tangible things that we can do where we feel like we're actually doing something that's have an impact. I think that's what's really important. So we're not just turning up to an event and being passive and just listening, but we're doing something that's really, really meaningful. And that is through adults bridging with young people, because that doesn't happen enough. Young people are, I promise you guys, young people are out there. They are having these conversations, very similar things being said. And like Derry said a couple of times as well, it's like, we're both having these conversations, but just in separate spaces. And so it's really important for myself, for us to bridge that. And that is through us being able to understand each other. I think young people also are aware of the power structures that are within school. And so they're less reluctant to engage with adults and teachers, because they realize the relationships that they have in schools don't allow that to happen all the time. And so for me, it's really important to make sure that we bridge that gap and say, you know, there's amazing adults there that want the same thing as us, and we want it too. So if we come together, then we're going to get there 10 times faster. And sometimes I think one last thing to say, that includes adults almost listening more than they speak, because sometimes young people feel as if, like, you know, they're being, you know, that the adults are dominating and that their voices aren't heard. And so there's so many amazing examples whereby adults and organizations are really, really just allowing us to take the stage, allowing us to talk and really value us. And again, like I said, not doing it in a tokenistic manner. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Leah. Hi, I'm Simi. I'm 16 years old, from London, part of People Power. I think People Power has been such an amazing experience, and over the lockdown, I think it's just grown and grown. It's been a really useful movement for helping to connect young people, which I think is really the key to creating this change, whether it be enacting democratic education or just empowering young people. I think this sort of collaboration between young people from many different locations, as people from People Power who are miles away from where I am, but we can still connect because we're united by this like one goal of creating a better education system that better empowers young people to be more to go into the wider world. And I think it's been really interesting to start to connect with educators and teachers as well, who also have that sort of vision for change of more self-directed and democratic education. I think it's been really inspiring to find out more about that, and also work together and collaboratively for a future that everyone kind of sees.
All right, so to begin this introduction, I think it'd be best to sort of go through a bit of a story. When I was in kindergarten, I was told by a staff member that there are some things in life that you have to do. This is the unfortunate truth, that such a statement is a clear-cut message that compulsory schooling imposes on its students. Our current system demands that students subjugate themselves to ineffective bucket loads of homework, quizzes, and tests, taking away their joy of learning. They have to, as the statement before suggests, or else students can face detention, suspension, or expulsion. Students have no say in the matter. As we all know, something needs to be done about this. So many have tried to formulate a solution. Many insist that progressive models such as Montessori and Waldorf are the best bet we have in reforming our school system. And surely it is a step in the right direction. However, give or take my anecdotal experience as a Montessori student, I soon realized it's not good enough. Adults still call the shots, and students are only given a margin more say over their learning, but only within a specific mandated subject. Students still had no say in the matter. There had to be something better. As luck may have it, there is. In my freshman year of high school, I was first introduced to Dr. Peter Gray in an unschooling documentary. I didn't remember what the documentary was called, but the criticisms Dr. Peter Gray made against conventional schooling really resonated with me. To quote, "Grades in schools are as if teachers throw doggy biscuits to students for obeying their command." This animosity I had towards school now made perfect sense. Soon enough, I learned more about his research on self-directed education and the various SDE-aligned schools across the globe. Students have a say in the matter. Since then, I've been a long-term advocate for self-directed education as a viable restructuring of compulsory schooling. Published by the National Youth Rights Association, I have co-authored the Academia Manifesto with fellow unschooler Catherine Farr, outlining what we can work on towards democratizing our schools worldwide. I have also founded a new activism forum on Discord called the Academia Coalition, where various student rights organizations can work together to push legislation towards fulfilling the Academia Manifesto. What I've learned since then is that despite what my kindergarten teacher once said, we don't have to put up with a problematic school system that we've made for ourselves. However, everything I just said doesn't matter in the long run because I'm just one person who's already gone through this system. What matters is the following question. How do students themselves view their education experience? And how would they like to go forward with it? How would they want to promote student wellness? Well, one former student has the answer. Jim Flannery attended public school in the United States in a suburb in Connecticut. He got top grades that allowed him to go on to obtain a biomedical engineering degree from a top university where he graduated magna cum laude. By conventional metrics, 22-year-old Jim Flannery appeared to be the poster child for a successful public education system. As a surprising twist, at 27 years of age, Jim left the tech startup world and took a job as a physics teacher at a public high school. Within a year, Jim left high school to create an alternative to the conventional school system, setting the foundation for his organization, the Peer Unschooling Network. That being said, I now give the stage to Jim Flannery and his fellow associate, Jordan.
I'll just start with, well, I'm an unschooler. I'm technically graduated now, but I unschooled for the last 3 years of high school after going through public school and various private schools. And I actually loved school. I didn't suffer from a lot of what students currently suffer from, but I know that I came to believe that self-directed education was a better way and has been so much better for me and has freed me in all of these ways. And it's really important to me that other people are able to. I was 14 when, it was my mother and I had both been reading the Teenage Liberation Handbook by Grace Llewellyn. But yes, it was more my decision than hers. And I've been autonomous in my education for 3 years now. So I was a teenager. And I love the Academia Manifesto. I think it has a lot of truth. I especially agree with the issues that are outlined, that there are so many. It's just unbelievable how wrong the public school system is structured, and even a lot of alternatives to the public school system. And yes, so it's kind of got like a few different sections, and it talks about what self-directed education is, which of course I love since I've been living that, and gives a great K through 12 to college outline based on Peter Gray's work. that is also inspiring. And I guess my issues come into the demands that I think that the education system needs to be transformed from many different directions, that it can't just be government. And I mean, actually, I probably could think that it could just be people, but that it's very, very important that it's grassroots, not only in like a local government level, but in a individual level, if that makes sense. And like you said at the beginning, like no solutions, like no certainty. I have one story, and for me, it was relatively easy because my parents were on board. I had their full support, and so I just did. I think that you hit on something with libraries. Like for my family, that has been like a major source of community and education, and would be it's mentioned towards the end of the Academia Manifesto as one of the different ways that the school system could be changed, or that this new restructuring could occur, is giving funding to libraries to become more of self-directed education spaces. I think that was actually one of my reservations at the idea of the government taking over self-directed education. That I personally don't want a federal government to take over too much in general, and especially not. That's the largest part of the problem now, is that the government is in charge of our education, and we aren't. So yeah, I guess, it's a tricky thing. I think that personally, my initiatives would be more towards getting specific kids that need to leave out. That's really what the Peer Unschooling Network is supposed to help happen. And I've seen similar initiatives. And this is like a much grander scale. Whenever I think of movements, I think of like small meetings all over the place that kind of form into bigger meetings. And the idea of different kids starting clubs or making like personal marketing type things. I contacted a local group, a local youth project in my town, asking if I could have a self-directed education club where it's a place where all these teenagers, a lot of teenagers who go there because they don't really like school and they actually go there to like commiserate about it. Oftentimes, I wasn't able to because of my town shutting down, but
now, would there have been a financial cost to you, or is that just a community resource that you were just going to gather people at a community center, basically?
It was going to be gathering people at a community center, and actually that specific community center has pretty ample funding if for youth-based youth-initiated projects. So I was going to be asking them to, I don't know, it was going to be like buying 25 copies of the Teenage Liberation Handbook that they could then either have there for kids to read or even take home and borrow. Like I was asking for funding for like kind of a self-directed education library. And then we would have this group where I could mentor kids in how to leave. And so that's just one example. And if other students were doing the same kind of thing in their towns, wherever, I'm in a little town in Western Massachusetts. But this could happen where, we don't, even though North Star is about an hour away, most of the people I know have never even heard of self-directed education. If there were other initiatives like that, putting up posters and telling friends and getting people together, I think that's been a huge issue for unschoolers, is finding other unschoolers. And I think initiatives like that deliberately helping kids. Yeah, I think my poster said something like, hating school but still want to be successful or something. Yeah, it was I mean, I tend to work better in physical spaces, so that was the initiative there, and also that all of those kids were already right there. I was just kind of going to be popping up to, I don't know, evangelize for self-directed education, like, because there's a benefit of doing something, and then there's also even more powerful teaching other people how to do it. So I know, I mean, just with the Peer Unschooling Network, I have a resource of many unschoolers that are on this social media site. And if I were to have some kind of class on teaching how to start a group like this, doing the research to find out if there's a similar project going on somewhere near you, because
to make sure you're not like reinventing the wheel, like why go create an organization if there's one 2 blocks away that you just didn't hear about?
Yeah, well, because then it becomes an easy thing to just, because I think that's where it can get really tricky, is like wanting to form things that are too big in some way. Then it gets overwhelming and it isn't done. And so with this, it would just be like a one afternoon a week with some teenagers who are already there. And then if you get them excited, then yeah, my mom, it kind of follows, like my mom has this, is really into a natural medicine and like was learning how to use it. And she took a class, and then she taught a class, and then some of the people in her class taught that class again, all using this one lady who had made teaching available, like her own teaching on how to teach available. I mean, and I guess, yeah, it's a kind of question of dedicating myself to this, which I've thought about doing and would like to do. I'm currently being persuaded to go the college route, even though I'm not sure about it.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey.
And hopefully in that way be able to help with something top down if I were to get high enough. But yeah, I think with all of this, I mean, I always think like the time is now. There's only power right now.
So what do you want to study at college? What are you looking to major in?
I don't know, probably literature, honestly. I'm a little obsessed with British literature.
Cool.
And so, but it's been recommended to me that I become a professor. And I think I might try for that route, in which case I might go into the education field to undermine it. Yeah, well, with this, it's a very loose plan. The only way that I could actually like agree, like, I don't know, agree with this plan it was suggested to me, and then I started to like it more and more, was the idea, like knowing that I could at any point abandon it, was the only way I could actually like be like, I'll become a professor.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess the idea is, I mean, that Peter Gray, he's a great example that people turn to him and his work because he has some of like the worldly qualifications that and the educational qualifications that certain people require to pay attention to someone. No, and I totally get that, because like for me personally, it was people like Blake Bowles and Grace Llewellyn and your work that were inspiring for me to leave. I guess something like the Academia Manifesto, like the government respects people with qualifications better, for example. And I think that's part of even though I personally like the coming from underneath, there's also something to having influence at a different level, and I'm it's just an idea.
Jordan, what is kind of like persuading you the most for college? Like, is it kind of having that position where maybe you can do kind of the top down, kind of initiate change? Or is there something like, I know I'm taking a gap year right now because I'm trying to figure out what the next steps are for me. So I'm wondering kind of like what is the main factor that's driving you to post-secondary institution?
Yeah, I'm also in my gap year and I'm applying to college right now. And actually the main couple of influences was like my mother and a counselor who I love. I'm naturally academic, and I love like reading old books and talking about them and writing and like all of the stuff that would set me up for success in a college. And so I think it's honestly, it's like being told like you would do so well in that, and also like the idea of going to a place where I could meet a lot of other people who are just as excited about learning as I am, which at college there are certain places, certain groups of people that are not that way. They're going there for whatever reason, but you also find people who get excited about Austin like I do. So things like that are part of the reason. Also kind of a networking thing, to meet other people that have similar interests and passions to me. Those are some of the reasons. Like if school was online, I don't think I would go like this year. Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is that like I've been told I would be good for college. But there's the decision of would it be good for me? Yeah.
Exactly. But it sounds like that even you're kind of inspired to go there because of all the other people that you'll meet that are also interested in like British literature. Is that what you said you're interested in?
Well, right? Lots of things, but that's one, yes.
That's specific, right? And I bet you may find like a huge pool of people that are going to be just as enthusiastic. And so I think that's exciting. Like I think one thing as kind of homeschoolers and unschoolers, we need to realize that you can go into kind of more of the traditional education pathways if you want to, like if that's where kind of your unschooling journey is leading you. Like, I don't know, I'm excited to see how it goes for you in there. I think it'll be really fun.
Thank you. Well, I will say that I had a couple friends that I stayed friends with after I left school. I went to a very small school. And yeah, there were 15 kids in my class and 60 kids in the whole school. And I found that I was a part of what was really a network and not a community. That we were friends because we saw each other every day and not because we actually cared about each other beyond that. And so I actually lost most of my friends from school. But I also became friends with, I became friends with a lot of adults, which is kind of funny. A lot of my best friends are like more like mentors. And then I spend a lot of time with my family. And then I have a community, it's about half an hour away, where there are a lot of homeschoolers and really unschoolers. So I kind of became involved in that community, and it's a multi-generational community that like my friends range from like 12 to 30, and it's I found like a pretty special place. But in terms of like keeping my school friends, I have a couple that I'm occasionally in contact with, and see because like our families are friends. But most of them found it hard to relate with me after I left, and I think some of them felt pretty threatened by my decision. That like some of them would actually kind of, I don't know, make little comments like defending school and defending their going to school specifically. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting mix. Like I made friends based on interests afterwards, and based on external communities to school. And that's actually like one of my major reservations, is that when I was in school, I was the perfect student. I mean, like my life revolved around school and getting good grades and getting the teachers to like me. And I was called teacher's pet all the time. Like that's who I was. And I'm a little, hesitant. That's one of the reasons I'm not fully on board with going to college, is I don't want to get sucked back in to a system that I've figured out how to be like intrinsically motivated, which took like the better part of 2 years. And I don't want to go back to extrinsic motivation.
Well, couldn't you go to like community college and take a few classes that would be whatever your general ed credits would be, and maybe even some like British literature classes. And then you could get, I mean, not to say that that's the school you want to go to or anything, but you could, I mean, at any time you could just start taking classes and get your feet wet.
This past semester, I took 4 different, with 3 different colleges, with a community college and then MCLA and Williams. So I like got like a real like college class, and it was, I'm glad that I did it. And it was, actually, I stayed pretty autonomous.
Hi. Thanks so much for coming to this conference and for attending and listening to what I have to say and what all of my fellow speakers have to say. It's really, I feel honored that you have taken this time out of your day and out of your busy lives to attend this conference and to really tune in and not only hear, but hopefully act on some of the things that we all have to say today. So how I started and kind of what brings me here is I just graduated high school. I got my Ontario Secondary School diploma, and you may think that I went through high school like most teens would, but I did it a bit differently. So I went to school and I did it kind of a hybrid, flexible model that luckily, I feel so lucky that my school allowed me to come a few days a week, come for only a few classes, and really make school fit my life and really fit what I thought my learning path is and would be, instead of me having to kind of fit their model of school that was already in place. And I'm asking myself the question is, why am I kind of, what makes me lucky, and why can't other students and every student have the opportunity to really have school be something that, one, they enjoy, and 2, they can actually really learn from. It can really be a beneficial experience where we use the amazing mentors that are at the school and the amazing facilities so that we can really move forward in education in preparing students for the future that we're so unsure about. Because if people, I believe, are helping and leading their own path, then they're going to get to a destination that's closer to where they want to be. So with my school, I want to thank them for cooperating and allowing me to do the flexible model. And I also want to send a challenge out to all the other schools for, if a student comes to you and wants to do school a bit differently, why don't we give them the opportunity and allow them to try? Because at the end of the day, if we're not given the opportunity to try our own thing, think about how many amazing products and services that we have today that wouldn't even be in existence. So my journey started in kindergarten when I first entered the educational realm. And before then, for sure, I was learning, but this is more traditional education starting in kindergarten. And I went through for a little while, and I kind of did it a bit differently at more of an alternative school, but still a public school. And then I decided, you want to know what? With the consultation with my parents, in grade 1, it wasn't really fitting me. So I went to homeschooling and unschooling. So I was homeschooled and unschooled, I would say, for life, but in actuality and for concrete dates, I was homeschooled from about grade 1 to grade 8, where I tried out school a bit more just to see if I liked it. And then after a few months in grade 8, I decided that unschooling was a better fit for me. And then grade 9, I decided I'm going to try public school again. So I went into my public school and I took off 1 day a week to still do some homeschooling courses, but I was there 4 days a week taking 4 courses and really working there. Really, I was attending every day and I was doing like any other student would. But after that semester, I thought to myself, I'm really not having time to do all the volunteer things and all the extracurriculars that I'm kind of used to and all the community engagement and involvement. And I really wasn't feeling that school was the perfect fit for me based on how much time I felt was spent on things that didn't really matter to me and the direction I was going. So I decided I'm just going to go back to homeschooling. I'm going to do a few courses online, and then maybe in the future I'll try out school again, but for now, I'm done. And my school brought me in with administrators and the school social worker, and I have to thank them all so much for this. They said, how can we make school work for you? What do you want, and how can we make our facilities and our system fit you better? And that single question opened so many doors. It really kind of unleashed the dam and the waterfall of what all could happen for me in my education journey, because I knew that usually the school is not involved. In the past, some schools, like, they don't feel comfortable sharing the resources that they have, or for other financing reasons they're not able to. But my school, which was a public school and which still is a public school, allowed me to do it more flexibly. So they allowed me to go there a few days a week, enough to stay enrolled in the courses and stay engaged, and I worked out with my teachers, which I thought gave me so much more responsibility and more ownership over my learning, because I controlled what days I was going to be there. So when I was there, I was fully engaged, and the days that I wasn't there and I was working remotely, I was working from home, or I was working on other courses, I was able to manage my time so I could still stay on track, but still live my life outside of school. And I think that this is an opportunity that I feel so lucky and so kind of blessed to have been able to have throughout my schooling experience in the last 4 years. And I feel like more students can benefit from the support that we can give them. Because though my school allowed me to do this and my parents were on board, there are a lot of other factors they're really hard to deal with when you're new to alternative education and when you're trying to still be in the school system but still have your own little thing going on. So I think that it's so important that we have organizations and individuals that can help and support our students, and that we have schools be open and able to help our students. Because at the end of the day, if the school is trying to get the children to fit into the school's mold, it's not going to work as well as if you have a bunch of engaged, empowered, and imaginative students, and the school is helping them to solve the problems that we're going to have in the future. Because if we keep solving problems with the same thinking we have today, we're not going to get new solutions. But if we have brand new thinkers that we're able to empower, then they'll be able to, and hopefully I'll be on board with in one of these amazing ideas, I'll be able to help with my kind of unique perspective and help us lift ourselves and our whole society out of some of the crazy issues that we're facing, like extreme climate crisis and racism and Indigenous rights, and really helping people empower each other so we can be individuals and have a whole society that is built more around consenting and more around really driving and fueling our passions and really going for what we want to achieve. So I think that having this platform to share kind of a bit of my journey and to hear all the other amazing speakers, I think it's just, I want to say thank you so much to the organizers for putting this together and for allowing me my little chunk of time to share what I have to say. And I really hope that everyone listening, whoever's in your life, if they're people that are older adults, if they're children, if they're teenagers, you're able to empower them and yourself to take control of your life and take control of your learning. And it's not going to be easy. And I don't mean that to scare people off or to make it seem like, wow, it's going to be so hard. But I have to say it is worth it. Some days may feel hard, some days may feel easy, but definitely when you're blazing a new path, it takes more energy and time and motivation to keep yourself going. But I think that we all have that. And I think that sometimes you may need to just a process that non-schooling we call deschooling, and kind of let some of the pressures, external pressures, roll off of you and kind of get out of your system so that you can use your own motivation to really get you where you want to be. And not saying that you know where you want to be, or that every single child knows where they want to be, or every single senior or adult or teenager, but if you are acting from where, like, kind of what your next right move may be, then you're going to eventually make all those tiny steps in the direction you want to go instead of taking larger steps in a direction that you don't even care about. So sometimes taking the smaller steps can get us exactly where we need and want to be. So I want to thank you guys so much for listening. I want to thank everybody for, again, taking the time out of their day, listening to me. If you have any questions, please reach out and contact me or ask me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about my journey or about any of the other realms that I have some knowledge of. Thank you so much. It was still a public school. I'm in Ontario, Canada, so it was in a city called Hamilton, and it was one of 7 in Canada. I believe it was part of kind of this alliance for more self-directed education within public schools. So I found that to be really a really good fit for me, I guess, because I wanted something that was a bit more flexible. So they were flexible with my homeschooling schedule. And so it was an alternative school, but it still was a public school. I think you're right. Like, the school administration is so much on how the school is run. And I think it also, the board definitely trickles down for sure into how the school is run. So I'm thinking that if we started, like, hopefully individuals within a school can kind of instill a little bit of wiggle room, and then it can kind of ripple out. But it would, for it to become the norm, I think at like a school board level, because I think school boards have more power than kind of we realize, especially with COVID, when we're realizing that school boards can choose to do different things because it's so regional. So I'm thinking that having like the principals, and if your principal's on board, like, a lot of great things can happen. And it's just getting those people to be interested and kind of willing to try a different style, because it is hard, right? Like, teachers college, a lot of lovely people go into teachers college and then come out and are kind of different people, and the way they would manage kids and kind of the students that they have would be different than maybe they originally wanted to. So it's almost kind of the workshops for teachers, because that's what kind of empowered me in school, having a few of the teachers that were kind of radicals in that idea of kind of like closing the door and doing the right thing. So I think that's kind of where the change can start, with like individual people trying to get it to ripple out. Heather, but I love that word, like they're not human becomings, they're human beings, right? Like, they're not just empty vessels floating around looking to be filled up. And I think a lot of speakers this weekend have articulated that, and I think it's exciting to see such a wave of kind of empowerment to children coming. Heather, I think that having kids immersed in the community is going to create more well-rounded individuals than having them in kind of this like kind of monoculture happening within the schools. I would work out with the teachers how many days a week I'd show up, because certain classes you need to be there. Like, for example, a gym class is a lot of participation, right? But your English class, not as much participation. So all like the students would visually see Grace isn't here today, and they all knew kind of what I had worked out, because I'm sitting beside them, we're talking every day or the days that I'm there. And so the school did offer what they offered to me to other people that I know that kind of went into that through homeschooling, or it already was. I chose the school because I knew they were more welcoming to homeschooling and unschooling. And I think the idea of equity and fairness within that is, I would like to see it really encourage for everyone to take kind of control and have the opportunity to direct their education. But you are right that a lot of people don't have the support in their family, and then also don't really know what's out there. So there were so many students I know kind of in school that they kind of weren't really interested in doing anything differently, because they were just so used to kind of like, I'm going to be in high school for a few more years and then I'll get out and do something different.
I am in Germany, and actually young teachers in Germany, when they go to their teacher training, are told, don't try to do anything different. You'll get a burnout in your first 3 years and you will be out. Just do everything the classical way. This is what is being recommended and taught right now in Germany.
Wow. That's like, it kind of makes sense in some ways why they're saying that to people, but in real life, I feel like there's still a lot of teacher burnout in most places. Exactly. And one thing, I don't want to go too much over time over our break, but my mom just reminded me of is that kind of like we've seen evidence of how kids learn, and it's like not really the way the school teaches currently. So even if like people in power, like politicians and people that, you know, could have the political will to do it, if they can help show some support for it, that would kind of be exciting, because evidence-based learning, like a lot of us agree that we like, you know, evidence and doing things that prove that they're going to work. So I think it's exciting to know that it's proven that self-directed education kind of creates more kind of responsible and well-rounded individuals.